We're going to go with the wide receiver, originally out of Pitt, now at USC, 4-star recruit out of high school. It is Jordan Addison. Little bit on the small side. He's 6 foot, 175 pounds, was uber productive in his sophomore year with Kenny Pickett under center. Jack, are you an Addison fan? What do you make of him?
I am. I really like his game. There are some concerns which I'll come on to, but I think there's a lot to like. I think when you're projecting college receivers to the NFL, there's always that challenge of, valuing traits over other aspects of the game. The one thing that he does for me really well, he's a great route runner. That always translates every year. There's a guy, last year you got Chris Olave, a year before Devontae Smith. Just it translates so well and effortlessly. And he's brilliant. He knows how to manipulate defenders in space. He's got the kind of wherewithal. He's also got that kind of athletic profile to throttle down at the top of his routes, create separation. Again, that's easily translatable. You can see how it works. He's a good athlete as well. You're not getting we all know about, not talking about him today, but Jackson Smith and Jigba. There's a lot of talk about him being a great route runner. He is, but Addison is also a great athlete. And I think that's the difference between those two guys there. He can be a 3-level threat. I think he caught something like a third of his targets, or a third of his receptions rather, at USC, I think, were screens. But don't let that fool you into thinking he's just an underneath merchant. He can win at every level. He's got the speed to win deep. If you kind of play off coverage, he'll blaze past you. Good hands as well. There were some drop issues at Pitt. I want to say it was like 21 or 23 drops over 2 years.
It was his freshman year, wasn't it? It was pretty horrific in terms of drops.
Yeah, which, there's always the fancy conversation about how much do drops matter, and I do think they are overrated. But from an NFL coach's perspective, they're going to want a guy who can reliably catch. He's improved massively. He only had 2 drops all of 2022. So you can already see there's a lot to like. He's got that kind of wiggle after the catch too, which, again, if you're a smaller guy with good athleticism, that's what you want to see. You mentioned at the top his size. That's going to be the one thing that worries teams, I think. There's definitely a role for him at the NFL level. I don't think he's kind of too small to be, a good NFL receiver. The question is whether he can still play outside. You can see from these clips, he played, I think, 3/4 of his snaps as a boundary receiver at USC. He's listed at 6 foot, 175. I mean, I always think if you're listed at 6 foot, you're probably 5'10". So he is probably smaller than that. And, then you're starting to talk about, again, the Devontae Smith kind of comparisons. I mean, he's managed pretty well in the NFL. We just saw him put up 100 yards in the Super Bowl. So, there's a lot to like. There are some weaknesses, but it feels like a very kind of high floor player that you can he might never be a wide receiver 1, but he's going to be a very good wide receiver 2 that you'd be happy to have on your roster.
Yeah, I think, you've hit on a lot of the things that I love. My big thing is I'm an analytics guy at heart, but I do love a good route runner, and I think that you watch him on film and he just gets open with ease. I think his ability to, almost have a plan on every snap. He sets up a defender very well in terms of whether that's being stacking or kind of getting an inside leverage to then break out. He's very good at that. And to me, that's kind of a next level thing that most players normally learn once they're in the NFL. I think there is the concern about size, and a lot of people will project him as a potential slot at the next level. I think for me, he's got the release package that I think he can play outside. Yes, I think he'd be an excellent slot receiver, and I don't necessarily see that as a knock on him. But I think, you said Devonta Smith, and I think he's naturally going to get a lot of those comparisons because of the size. I see a lot of Deontay Johnson in him, in that I don't necessarily think that because he's not massive, he means he can't play outside. I think he's a good enough route runner. He's a good enough route package, a release package, that he can play outside and can still get open for fun. And he's good with the ball in his hands. And yeah, there's that potential kind of drops thing that Deontay Johnson has had a couple of times. So I think that for me, yeah, he's never going to be what people want to call an alpha. But for fantasy, I don't really care. I think this is a guy that can command 120, 130 targets in the NFL. And yeah, that's fantasy gold right there.
Yeah. I mean, it all comes down to what offense you're playing him in. I can see him leading a team in targets, even if he is never that. Like I say, that alpha, you're not going to want him to be going up against a kind of big-bodied, physical press corner all the time. But I don't think he can't play. Like you said, I don't think he can't play outside. He's got enough shift to kind of make guys miss. If guys get too physical and too much of a kind of handsy approach at the line in press, he will make you pay. So I don't think there's any worry about that. Like you say, it might be a case of bit of outside, bit of in the slot. You can also use him underneath on swing passes and screens. So